Well, we're back on the promenade talking with the Minister for Infrastructure, Phil Gawne, and you've got more consultation that's been put out. There's going to be another exhibition here at the Sea Terminal. Where are we up to with this now? Is this a go situation finally?
Yeah, what we've done, as we said we were going to do all the way along here, we've said we want to consult, we want to make sure that we come up with the best possible scheme, meeting all the objectives that have been set by various different partners. So, Douglas Development Partnership, Economic Development Department, the Chief Minister, the Regeneration Committee, and the more I go on, is the more likely I'll forget one. But loads and loads of representative bodies in Douglas have said that we want these various features to be retained. We want this to be improved.
Okay.
We want
the main thing, which is coming behind you, is a horse tram. It seems to always come back to where you're going to place the horse trams more than anything else. I mean, okay, the blind had an issue with shared space.
Yeah.
But the shared space. Let's do that one first. Yeah. Shared space, is that now really gone? You've got traffic control points again, haven't you?
Yes, certainly. We've got 3 pelican crossings and a variety of zebra crossings along
more or less
the
than
full length. I think there's actually slightly more controlled crossing spaces along the whole of the promenade, but that's still going to minimise the stop-start nature that we had. So we haven't got as many pelican crossings. We've got fewer pelican crossings, but more zebra crossings.
And the smarter ones, they know that there's a sort of feel that you can go at a certain speed and you should get along the promenade.
Yeah,
better,
that's certainly the plan. So effectively, whilst we initially, I think the plan was we were hoping to get rid of all the stop-go nature of the thing, so getting rid of all the pelican crossings. Having had the opportunity to go round part of this bit of Douglas with a blindfold on and a guide dog, I realised that this really wasn't on for partially sighted and blind people. So we have conceded that point. We said all along that we were going to work with them and try and find a way forward, and we've done that. We've also again tried to work with all the people who have their concerns about the promenade walkway. What we are doing with the walkway is, I think the minimum width at the moment is about 5.8 metres, and the minimum width is going to be increased to over 8 metres. They're still going to have the tram track at the side of the new extended walkway, but there's still going to be far more space on the walkway than there currently is at the moment.
The horse trams are now going to the side again. I mean, because that's the big issue. Where were the horse trams going to go?
Yeah.
You haven't got them on the prom most of the way now. They're on the side, or is it a combination of the two?
They're effectively where they were in the scheme that nobody seemed to be objecting to, that David Cretney was promoting. And of course,
2011 almost. Wasn't it?
Well, no, this was basically last year.
Oh.
It's where David had them in.
It started in 2011. The first we put a video out the other day about
absolutely.
how it all was under consultation.
So in essence, we're back to the same location that they were in the previous scheme, that nobody objected to, but people are still objecting because they've now got, I don't know, they seem to have got used to the idea that for some reason horse trams and people don't mix. I think that if we get the necessary permissions, and if the actual works are completed, people will very quickly realise that actually it isn't a problem. But
you've got, presumably, the end of the season of the horse trams is a decision time, isn't it? Because that will be, otherwise there'll be another limbo period. You've got to have a decision in place. You've gone for planning, haven't you?
Yeah, planning permission. We submitted the plans on Friday, and these are now the final plans. It is highly unlikely that we'll be making any further amendments, because we really have listened as far as we possibly can and tried as far as we can to accommodate everyone's
plans
views.
at the Sea Terminal on Friday are not for more consultation. This is what is happening.
Yeah,
this is it.
It's showing people what we have submitted to planning,
right.
As much as anything, so that no one at any future point can turn around and say, well, they put those plans in under cover of darkness and nobody knew about it. We want to make absolutely sure that everyone knows, so if people want to object, they have the opportunity to do that.
So, unless planning throw it out, horse trams are going to move.
Well, no. Then once we get planning permission, assuming we get planning permission, we then have to go through Council of Ministers, and we have to go through Tynwald. So I need to get those permissions as well, and we'll just have to see how we go. all I can say is we have done everything that was asked of us. If people choose to change now the principal objectives that they set the department 5 years ago, I would have rather liked them to have changed those objectives before now. So we're going back to Tynwald, back to Council of Ministers, assuming we get planning permission, with what we were asked to deliver.
But any survey will always get certain people go for yes or no. I mean, you're never going to get everyone on side, are you?
Yeah.
I mean, what do you make to the papers running their poll? That was an interesting exercise, but
yeah, I think it's very unfortunate. I mean, I don't want to openly criticise Isle of Man newspapers, but there were practically every flaw you could imagine in the public consultation was in their consultation. You know, the way in which they lumped different groups together. They didn't ask certain very pertinent questions. They didn't seem to highlight all the reasons why we've said certain things that they asked questions about can't actually happen. You know, they were going to cost millions extra to do it the ways in which some of the questions were phrased. Okay. All that stuff wasn't in the article, so it's a fairly unhelpful piece of
I've got to ask you, will we be having roundabouts or roundels now that I've got used to this word? What have you got?
They're kind of marked areas on the road which you can go round.
Shared space?
You could call it roundabouts. It's certainly not shared space. We're not. What we're using is some of the design concepts that have been developed through shared space, but what we are also doing is making changes to make sure that that what we design is going to be safe for people.
Broadway lights go, a new roundabout at Summerland,
and
this sort of what do they call that word? The community area down by the Sefton?
Yeah, what's they call it? The cultural quarter.
Quarter.
Yeah. And again, you know, I mean, you've been with us down in Lorient, and you will see similar sort of cultural quarters. There's a road that we were crossing on a fairly regular basis to get from one part of Lorient to the other. It used to be a very main, busy sort of road similar to the promenade. It's now a sort of two tracks of traffic with an obvious easy route for people to walk across and lots of public space where people can go and sit and enjoy the views.
We could talk about the quayside here in town, North Quay. That is particularly looking like shared space. You're shutting it off in the evenings as well.
Yeah.
That seems to be working, doesn't it?
It does seem to be working, yeah. And again, you know, I was out at a meeting in the constituency last night at which we were talking about effectively a 10-metre stretch of road, and my highways engineers were saying, well, as far as we're concerned, this is a reasonably designed piece of road. All the literature ever published on designing roads says that this is going to be safe, but the constituents that we were talking to basically were saying we don't believe it, and unfortunately, you know, you get to a point where what can you do? I mean, I have to, as Minister, take heed of the advice that I'm given by the people who the taxpayers pay to give me best possible advice. So I have to take notice of that. If people say they don't like it, or they don't want it, or they don't believe the experts, you know, I have some sympathy with people sometimes. But ultimately, my responsibility is making sure that we design something that is safe according to the people who know most about designing safe highways.
It's normally the shock of the new that gets people. I mean, I'm just looking at the clock there. It got moved.
Yeah.
Now no one even think about it being moved, but
Yeah.
that probably went through a lot of pain because of those sort of things. And you know, things outside, monuments outside the airports, which send people crazy, but everyone gets used to it. Do you think it's that sort of thing that give it time, people will get used to it and will like it?
I think that in a fairly short period of time people will like it. There will always be some people who will, you know, go to their graves determined that this was the wrong scheme to do, but I would imagine the vast majority of people, particularly people who visit the island, will come and think, gosh, isn't that a really useful space?
Is this going to be your legacy?
I kind of hope not, but I expect so. You know, there's so many big and important things that we try and tackle, and actually something like a road scheme, which primarily is not within my gift, you know, to be able to do an awful lot in terms of the actual shape of the concept. As I say, I've listed all the different politicians, the political groups, the representative groups who have had an input into this. So what I have to do is try and balance all the competing interests and needs. I've tried to do that to the best of my ability, but you know, if it was just Phil Gawne designing it as you know, a constituency MHK, or even as me as an individual, I'd probably do it completely different. differently.
But what money you spend on consultants? I mean, the shared space options. I mean, that's money gone down the tubes, has it? Lost?
No, I don't think so, because some of the elements that were being brought forward were really quite useful and valuable elements which are still incorporated in the scheme. But what I think we've done is we've listened to some of the best advice, and we have taken some of that advice, but we haven't necessarily followed all the advice.
How much money has it got to come in under? Have you got that final bill, or is that still yet to be determined?
Yeah, the figure that's been agreed quite some time ago was 21.5 million.
That's staying there. That's it, is it?
Absolutely. No, there's no way we're going to exceed that, as far as I'm concerned. And I've made it very clear to the officers: you design this scheme to meet the budget.
Okay.
We're not going to add on all the extravagances. In fact, there was a more extravagant design with all the features that everyone wanted in it, which was around about 28 million. And I've said no. Well, they're just not touching that. 21.5 million is the figure.
End of the season will be the end of the horse trams then for a while. If you get your nod on this, is that correct again? Will they have to stop?
Well, possibly not, because it would appear if we get the approval that we're looking for, and the track is on the walkway, then we may be able to continue the horse trams during the construction phase.
Just a small amount of it at any one time?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. So is that a wait and see also? Is that maybe possibility?
Well, I think we've got to see what we get back by way of support or otherwise from the various stages that we're now going through. But the one thing I would say, as someone who's very passionate about the heritage of the Isle of Man, you would expect me to say this. I think it would be an absolute travesty if for some reason we end up losing the horse trams, and I think there is a fairly realistic prospect that could happen. The Douglas horse trams have been running now, I think it's around about 140 years, continuously. That makes them unique in the world in terms of a heritage feature. We know that lots of people come to the Isle of Man for the heritage railways, and the horse trams have been very clearly identified as part of a package. And indeed, when it was announced last year that the trams weren't running this year, there was a fall off in numbers of people who were actually wanting to come.
Really?
I think
you could identify down to the horse trams though?
Yeah. Knocking. Getting rid of the horse trams is equivalent to demolishing Castle Rushen or knocking down Laxey Wheel, in my view. And I think it's really important that we make sure we do find a scheme that accommodates everyone's views, including this very old and very unique heritage attraction.
Has this worn you down, this whole thing?
I'd be lying if I said it hadn't. I mean, quite clearly, it is very, very difficult when you are trying to convince people who, in certain cases, are whatever you say, they're not going to be convinced. And I'm not necessarily talking about Facebook campaigners, because I think we have tried to engage with them. But there's some of my political colleagues, for example, who perhaps are looking at this as an election opportunity, and certainly, that kind of thing wears you down. I don't mind losing arguments based on fact and rational discussion. I do find it quite depressing, actually, in terms of politics when people engage in skullduggery and underhand politics to win an argument.
Really? That's going on? I mean, you had some fair... under the sort of table.
Well, it's more about personality and introducing scare stories rather than actually saying, well, okay, what is the real prospect? I mean, horse trams are not going to cause anybody any damage. Dogs, on the other hand, could potentially cause damage. We're not going to ban dogs from the promenade walkway because we've learned as a society to live with that. I'm absolutely sure we'll learn to live with the horse trams.
Because you realise if there is an accident, if something happens, that will fall back onto you, wouldn't it, big time?
Yeah, but then that happens anyway. In all the designs of everything that we do, we are supposed to design it properly. And again, that kind of ties us back to, where do I get my advice from? Do I get my advice from people who like the walkway and have used the walkway for dozens, if not hundreds of years, and love it the way it is? Or do I get my advice from people who have spent years studying and working in highway safety areas?
Finally, when will it be finished?
If everything goes ahead as we're hoping, it will be a 3.5 to 5 year build programme.
That's 3.5 to 5 years. That's not very precise, though, is it? I mean,
It's reasonably precise,
Okay.
bearing in mind the nature of the problem. I mean, what we are having to do, and again, people are perhaps still confused about what we're doing here. We are having to dig up the whole of the sort of the roadway because the infrastructure underneath it is basically collapsed, and a lot of the problems as well are associated with concrete slabs which are part of the foundation. Those are all starting to slip. We tried using a sort of a foam injection process on Lord Street, and that's not really worked as well as we would have liked. So there's a huge amount of work to be done, digging out all that stuff and then putting it back in. We can't tell you absolutely hand on heart what we're going to find when we start digging this up. We would like to think that we'll be finished in 3.5 years, but it's best to plan for difficulties. Also, we need to make sure that, if for example we had 2 weeks work left to do, we are going to stop if that 2 weeks would have clashed with TT, for example. So, there are things like that may be out of our control.
Well, thanks for talking to us, Dave. An extended interview and really quite detailed. And, of course, people can come down now to Sea Tunnel from Friday for the next week or so, is it?
Yeah.
And see the plans
Absolutely.
as they are now going to
And
happen.
they can look at them and they can either throw tomatoes at them or they can congratulate the Minister on a fantastic job. I suspect it'll be more of the former than the latter, but all I can say is we have tried as far as we possibly can to make this as safe as possible, but also to actually lift people's imaginations and say, actually, Douglas really looks rather fantastic. We've won awards for the works that we've been undertaking on the regeneration work in Strand Street. It would be great if we could do something similar with the promenade scheme.